Let's talk herd. It's really interesting. Today, when I was with them, the one Karamba who I'm doing this, where she's inviting me, and she stopped doing that for quite a while because she was like, sort of, they were doing their own thing, like it's springtime, and they were just quite happy, but she started becoming a bit. It's almost like she gets a bit demanding of my attention, and she just gets a bit like unfulfilled in some way. So today, when I went down there, I didn't feel that grounded. So I was like, I'm not going to, even think about doing anything like that. I'm just going to be with them. And we usually do that anyway. But then I went away because I wanted to do some cleaning of the fields, and I'd just taken the tractor out, and I looked around, and she'd put her foot through the gate, which was not a good idea. No. Because she was like trying to follow or get my attention, and she got a little bit like she felt it, like she had to she was kind of stuck maybe for like a few seconds, and then I was like, oh God. And I let her go, and she went back to her friend and just was like, obviously like seeking comfort. And so I let her do that for a little bit. And then I went to see her, and we just kind of stood together and just kind of embraced that feeling together of whatever it was in her. And then I thought, right, well, I'll just go up to the wall. I'll go to the gate or the wall bit where I go and see if she wants to do that. And she came up straight away, like really like purposefully, and like lined herself up purposefully, really sort of not necessarily enthusiastic, but just kind of dedicated, like really purposeful. And I got on her, and we've been doing this thing, which is really interesting, where we've been merging these two states. Like I noticed something, and we did quite a long meditation on it, like where things changed a lot energetically. But I noticed that, or I just realized that when you're riding a horse, that's a completely different world from when you're on the ground. And there doesn't seem like and that's my whole problem with it. At the beginning of doing this dialogue with the horses, that there didn't seem to be any connection between the two. So the last few times that I've been sitting on her when she's invited me, I've just been tuning into one, then the other, then one, then the other. And the meditation that we did was like, it did something where it took off that suppression of the horse's self. Like that was kind of like a bottle top that had pushed their energy down. So this was like her self coming through when I was sitting on her. And that was just what I was focusing on this. And I'd been doing this back and forth the last time, but this time we just were able to stay in that, just feeling her, and it's actually quite hard. Like I was listening to this man talk about how you can have a closed and an open loop. And a closed loop is where you stay present and like you stay conscious of everything you're doing and you're making decisions. I mean, he was talking about archery. But if you're in an open loop, you're just reacting. You just like aren't sort of really aware of what you're doing. So I was like conscious of staying aware of herself and not just going into the separate feeling riding thing where you're on a horse. And yeah, so I was really able to, and it just feels like she really, yeah, it feels therapeutic for her to do that. I mean, we don't do that for that long, but it's like, that's what she really, and then I always sort of realized that we're doing this journey together. It's not just about me. Like for her, there's something in her that wants to do that. And, she wanted me to be ready to be able to do it today. So it's like, I kind of feel like, I don't want to say that because, that could be just me. But I really don't think it is. But yeah, it was, yeah, really just to this thing about that we're changing all the time and that things are changing and that we don't have to keep looking at the past when we're looking at how we relate to horses. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
How would you say that you are? Like, what would you say your evolution is? Like, are you feeling new things? Like, just to put it simply, are you feeling new? Are you making discoveries?
I'll answer this one.
Yeah.
So, I love that story, Camille. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, my dog in the background. Let me bring her in.
I love it when the doggies are there.
Yeah, bringing in her energy. So the vulnerability piece, in terms of, okay, I feel that in order to discover something new that we didn't know before, vulnerability is very important. And that has, of course, vulnerability kind of shows up and arrives in lots of different ways and also in different velocity, depending on what we're working with and what we're feeling vulnerable and what we're touching within us or in a situation with another or with a horse. And what was coming through when you were talking was this kind of link between vulnerability and seeing. How when we are prepared to be vulnerable about something, we actually, it opens our sight in a way. If that makes sense. Like we're able to see things that we weren't able to before. We're able to see something that has always been, but we weren't necessarily comfortable in seeing it. And the vulnerability is like almost like the open ocean in terms of it can reveal and manifest into and form into anything. And in terms of change and discovering the new and coming to new insights, that I love what you said about, we don't have to always bring in the past, which I definitely resonate with. And at the same time, of course, there's this acknowledgement of what has been, and then we can let that go. But it's, sometimes acknowledging what has been is vulnerable in and of itself. And then we get to see,
Absolutely.
get to see within the vulnerability, and then the letting go process can create space for the new, but it can happen like all at once, And yes, what I find in terms of new information is my vulnerability and my humility with the horses is getting into a space of I do not know. And being prepared to also be like very much a student, in terms of like maybe not even with that label, it's just in this conversation I'm using that word, but I get into the energy of I don't know, and I am willing to in some way be taught something new. And one could say that that's a vulnerable place because, it can be so easy just to grab onto a concept and then run with it. And I also feel that the horses, part of shifting the shift that, you really touched on, Camille, in terms of like blowing off that, the suppression lid and really like your mare already feeling herself. I really felt that was like a reflection of you being able to feel yourself as well and to share that. And
that's interesting. Yeah.
And I feel that is, when you were describing that, it's the shift in the industry that we need is one of the shifts, and that's what we're all doing ideally, is we're contributing to that, whether it's energetically or in a very physical, literal way. And I think that one of those shifts needs to be, okay, can I be vulnerable enough to not know and put down everything that I've learned for this space and time, and remember that the horses have their own wisdom. And over time, I guess that becomes less of a vulnerable point and more of just like the best way to listen. And at the same time, not knowing can feel really scary, you know. But for me, that's where the new comes through in terms of new insights. And there are many. And every time I write one down, I'm just completely mind blown because it blows, again, to bring in, I guess, the ego again, like my own, any idea I may have had about something, it just seems to be so much bigger and simpler and more grounded. And sometimes it's just incredibly humbling, basically. And yet it's also, it can be vulnerable because there are times when I also don't know how to approach my own personal situations. And then going to the herd and saying, okay, I don't know. Like, and in the not knowing, just being suspended in potential, which again, depending on the human, can feel very scary. But there's a lot of seeing that happens there because my eyes are open. If you can't be vulnerable, then, or when we are vulnerable, our eyes can open a bit wider, which in turn lets in more information.
Ugh. And there was, I love that so much. Like everything you said is so, it just resonates so deeply with this. Because I say that to myself a lot these days. I don't know. And I feel, like you say, that's a kind of, it's a state of being that's so limitless, really. And the other thing I worked through that you reminded me of was this period of, and I don't know if you've experienced this as well, but this period of meaninglessness, like that was the word that I felt like, and maybe it was like a layer of the vulnerability, but just this, like, where's the meaning, and just, but not being frightened to allow it to just be that. And I think what it felt like was detaching from the, like, superficial reasons for doing what we're doing, like that you need to share it or that it needs to be something that other people care about or that even that it changes anything. So like detaching from all of that and then it became meaningless. But I think that was just a sort of a stage to go through before finding that a different meaning that was more rooted in reality, like that we do it because of it in itself, like the magic of it and all of the gifts that are in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question. Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh, what both of you are saying speaks to my heart and my current circumstance. I feel like I met my herd, the place where I belong. So I'm moving, taking a faith move to Minnesota, to be with this herd of like-minded people, and to find, of course, my horse people too, the people just where I belong. How would you introduce a new horse to their herd?
So yeah, I mean, we've done that a lot over the years with new horses, and sometimes if the situation allows, then, well, now that you say that, I'm going to start from, because recently one of the horses in my sister's herd went back to her original home. And before she went, her guardian said to me, what would you do to introduce her? And just what came into my mind was just be with your horses and invite her in. Like, just invite her into the herd, like when you're with them. So this is like an energy thing. And she did that. And I think it was quite powerful for her. And then when the mare actually went home, it was like amazing how quickly they embraced her. And I'm not sure what she did. If she probably just, I don't know if she had them side by side. I mean, in terms of practical, normally that is what you would do if it was a horse that was an absolute stranger. It would be a little bit calmer for them just to meet, like over a fence. But then it's very quick that they're ready.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it really makes that much difference in the long run to do that, because when they get together, they're going to go through this process that they go through, which is like a kind of alignment of their frequencies. So it's like the new one has to become it has to become aligned. So they will go through this process of keeping them out of the herd until they're kind of aligned and ready. And yeah, I would just say they shouldn't have any metal shoes on, and you just have to kind of trust that process and not have any places that they can get trapped when they're going to be running around together, because they are going to run around a bit, and just kind of trust and do that invitation as well. Like, bring that horse's energy into the herd before they physically come, because that makes it a lot more rapid, the attunement, I think. But it also depends on the horse. Like, if they're coming from a situation where they're quite institutionalized and they're not used to, they can't have like a herd and a whole territory that they're not used to all in one go. It'd be better that they learn, that they kind of got familiar with that idea, or like, being outside, or I don't know what the circumstances are, because some horses just don't know how to be outside and in a large area, and sort of looking after themselves. So what would you say, Dilara? What's your experience in that?
So Denise, are you asking also metaphorically in terms of you entering?
Yes, exactly. So say this is kind of a wild horse that's been subdued for a number of years, but is ready to get back to living a nice full life with their herd. Herd.
I think that there are quite a lot of symbols that we can take from the way that what horses need as well, that can relate to us in terms of re-entering community. I definitely agree with what Camille has said about energetically introducing first and bringing the energy in. And so again, in the human realm, that could be like laying the foundations, like preparing the way, whether that's conversations with people, or maybe reaching out to somebody that you know and letting them know that you're moving there, or finding people online. Of course, I'm going very much into the human realm now, but preparing the way so that energetically also you're building your own path into community, just as the energy of the new horse would come into the herd, but it's done in more of a kind of physical way because you're physically moving. Preparing the way, I feel, is very important. And then what came to mind when Camille was talking as well was this you mentioned also making sure there are no places that the new horse can be trapped. So allowing safety and a safe container to always be present alongside flow. So if the herd, for example, can move around and there's no one space that a new horse can get trapped, if they're running around and because I had this with Layla, who's my youngster. I brought her in energetically as well, and I sat in meditation with the herd and went into lots of journeys with them and really asked them, are you sure this is okay? Because it was my decision to bring her in. And when she came in, it was all hell broke loose. It was like they were such an established herd, and it depends on the horse, like Camille said. So it depends on the person. It depends on, what we are bringing with us when we enter community. Who are we? What is our energy? And she was a very big energy, very confident. She was only a year old, but she'd been the boss of her brothers, and she came in and was like, "Hi, I'm here," and they just absolutely shut her down. And huge learning curve for me, because she did get trapped quite a lot and had to jump a few fences. And again, consequently, had quite a few physical injuries, unfortunately. And because I didn't expect that, so huge eye opener. And at the same time, what I learned from that was, always, horses need safety above all in order to feel regulated, just on a very physiological level. And ultimately, as humans, we also appreciate safety and thrive in safety. And when it comes to being in numbers, yes, we are ultimately safer in numbers, in community, and that is a process. So allowing the process to happen step by step as well, preparing the way, allowing the process to happen, creating a safe container for the process to happen, and then also bringing in flow somehow, so that sense of being trapped and having to jump a fence just absolutely doesn't need to happen, because you're able to find that flow in the process because of the way that you've set it up.
I love both of your answers. That really does. Boy, I'm very glad I asked because I definitely don't want to show up. Here I am, yay! And because I can be a bit boisterous and enthusiastic, and I think going in and observing is really the best way. Like you said, follow steps 1 and steps 2, and make that build that safety net in.
What is the human equivalent of letting them meet over a safe fence? What's that human equivalent?
I don't know.
Because
say that again.
I think that can be curiosity, being genuinely interested in the people who are in front of you in a conversation can create this well, who are you? And who are you? And that kind of backward and forward moment that happens over a fence. But in the human terms, it would be, again, the fence would also be one's ability to open. Because if we are coming from a restricted place, then that also inhibits the connection. So in a way, the fence with horses allows connection because of the boundary in a way. And with humans, it could be the curiosity is there, and the boundary is more okay, I'm open, and I'm curious. Who are you? Rather than just assuming what's going on, or assuming who a person is, or someone assuming something about you.
Right. Yeah. And that I must say that is genuinely in my heart and soul. I don't think I've ever felt quite this drawn to a community. Other than in New Mexico, but this is such a strong pull. I can't ignore it. I mean, I actually have to go.
That's amazing.
I have a choice, of course. I could ignore my soul's, it's little. I could ignore my soul's encouragement to move into my truth, or I could find the courage to do it and be smart about it as well, not and go in new. So
Yeah, it reminds me of a man called Dr. De Martini. I don't know if you've heard of him.
John DeMartini.
Yeah, what was the thing that he did? What was it called? His book about, I can't remember, but the principle. Well, I remember him like explaining that if you're like on a high about something, like you're a bit like your young mare, like you're so full of energy and you're so happy, and you come back and your partner's there and they're not, or they're like just normal sort of level of energy. It's like that's when you're going to have an argument because you can't like they are going to defend themselves because they can't get on your high, like they can't get to where you are, and there's like that. So he said he would always make sure that he came down to a more balanced, neutral place before he would go home. So maybe there's something in that as well, like when you're meeting someone new, you're kind of like just being more balanced in some way. Yeah.
there's an oil
Just
for
maybe
that.
I'll
Yes.
yeah.
There's an oil for
Yeah.
that. Yes, and the meditative
because it's
state.
quite
I like that.
it's a fascinating thing, isn't it, when you meet new people? Like there's almost this completely subconscious, like, I don't know if that's the right word, but this meeting of energies that you're so aware of. But it can also be really altered by like how you think, like how if you are judging people. Because I remember years ago meeting this lady who, I can't remember how, but it kind of just started off on the wrong foot in some way. And I just decided that I didn't like her and I couldn't get on with her. And then, and we were going to this clinic together every day. And we were staying at her house. So I can't remember why I decided or what, but I just thought, you could change your mind about her and just see her as a nice person. And I don't know why I did that. If it was something I was doing at the time, but honestly, it was so radical because you would say like first impressions count and everything, but that first impression where we just didn't like each other, that completely changed. And I realized she was a lovely person. So yeah, it's quite, it's fascinating. Yeah.
And I think that with humans, there can be a lot of projection as well.
Yeah.
Whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
as aware as we can be or not, it still can be part of the way that we operate, depending on how we're feeling and what we're going through, and also what's needed in that relationship.
So true. Yeah.
And every time someone's in front of us, it is an opportunity for us to connect, but also grow based off what that person is highlighting. It is the same with the horses.
Bringing up. Yeah.
I love what you said about what John DeMartini shared, and it reminded me of the horses, of getting into a present place, getting into neutral, and then listening.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, and just being there and being a witness. Whether that's to yourself and the horses at the same time, or the horses to understand what's going on.
Yeah.